The next Monday came faster than Emma expected. The weekend had passed in a blur, her thoughts constantly circling back to that rainy night, to Ryan's calm voice. The warmth in his tone and the way he'd looked at her before she stepped out of the car. It had been nothing inappropriate, nothing she could point to as wrong. Yet something about that moment had lingered like the scent of rain after a storm. She kept replaying it, asking herself why it mattered so much when she walked into the office that morning. The usual noise greeted her, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the hum of chatter. She told herself to shake off the thoughts, to focus. But the moment she saw Ryan across the floor, her heart skipped slightly. He was in a navy suit today, his attention on a set of design prints. He looked composed as always, but when his eyes lifted and met hers, he gave her a small nod, simple, polite, but enough to make her forget how to breathe for a second. Throughout the day, they worked side by side on the upcoming campaign for a travel brand. Ryan was professional, focused, but there was an ease between them now, a quiet understanding that hadn't existed before. They didn't talk about that night, but it hovered in the air between them like an unspoken secret. By late afternoon, dark clouds started gathering again over the city. The windows dimmed with the weight of another coming storm. The team began to leave one by one, and soon only Emma and Ryan remained, finalizing the last layout. When the thunder rolled in the distance, Ryan looked out the window and sighed softly. "Looks like another long night for Seattle." Emma smiled faintly. "Seems like it." He turned back to her. "You don't have to stay late again. I can take it from here." "Fine," she said quickly. "I want to make sure the edits are right before tomorrow's meeting." Ryan studied her for a second, then nodded approvingly. "You're dedicated." "I like that," she smiled, trying not to read too much into his tone. But there was something about the way he said it, like he wasn't just talking about her work an hour later. When the rain began to fall harder, they finally wrapped up. Ryan glanced at her laptop, then at the dark sky. "Don't tell me your car's still in the shop." Emma hesitated, then laughed softly. "It is. I was going to order a rideshare." He shook his head, amused. "Emma, we've done this before. Let me drive you again." She should have said no. She should have been practical. But she didn't want to. The truth was, a small part of her had hoped he would offer. "All right," she said with a quiet smile. They left the building together again. Walking through the drizzle toward his car. The air was cool, smelling of rain and wet pavement. It felt strangely familiar, like stepping into a memory she hadn't yet finished living. As soon as they got in the car, Ryan started the engine, and soft jazz filled the space. It was peaceful, intimate, and far quieter than she'd expected. For a few moments they drove in silence through the glowing streets. The city lights reflected in the puddles, painting the road in streaks of gold and blue. Ryan spoke first, his voice calm but thoughtful. "Do you ever feel like life just passes you by? You wake up, go to work, go home, and then suddenly years are gone." Emma looked at him, surprised by the question. "I think everyone feels that sometimes," she said. "Especially when you spend more time at the office than at home." He gave a short laugh, guilty as charged. Then his tone softened. "I guess I just thought it would feel different. Success. I mean, you spend years chasing something, and when you finally have it, it doesn't fill the silence the way you hoped." Emma understood that more than she wanted to admit. "I used to think getting married would fix that. I was engaged once, remember? But it didn't make me feel whole either. Turns out you can share a life with someone and still feel completely alone." He glanced at her with quiet sympathy. "I know that feeling too well. It's for the first time." She noticed the faint weariness in his eyes, the kind of sadness that doesn't show in meetings or reports. "You were married once, right?" she asked carefully. Ryan nodded slowly. 5 years. We started out in love, but somewhere along the way, we stopped listening to each other. I was always working, chasing deadlines, thinking I was doing it for us. She said I was just doing it for myself. Maybe she was right. There was no bitterness in his voice, just reflection. Emma felt her chest tighten. That must have been hard. He smiled faintly, eyes still on the road. It was harder realizing I didn't even notice it falling apart until it was too late. The rain outside thickened, hitting the windshield in soft rhythms. Emma didn't know what to say. She wanted to comfort him, but words felt too small. So she just listened. The silence between them carrying more weight than any conversation. After a few moments, he turned the question toward her. "What about you? What happened with your engagement?" She hesitated. "He wanted me to give up my career. Said it was just a temporary distraction. I said no. He said I was too ambitious." Ryan's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. "That's not ambition. That's self-respect." The simplicity of his answer caught her off guard. No one had ever said it like that before. She looked at him, her eyes softening. "Thank you." Smiled gently. "You deserve someone who supports you, not someone who asks you to shrink." Those words stayed with her. They were kind, thoughtful, and somehow exactly what she needed to hear. The air in the car felt warmer now, charged with something she couldn't name. As they neared her neighborhood, the conversation grew quieter, but their silence wasn't empty. It was comfortable, almost tender. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the city seemed to glow softly under the lamplight. Ryan pulled up at a stoplight, his fingers tapping gently on the steering wheel. "You ever think about what makes people connect?" he asked suddenly. Emma tilted her head. "Like what draws two people together?" "Exactly," he said. "I think sometimes it's not about timing or logic. It's about recognition, seeing something familiar in someone else." She met his gaze, like seeing your own story in their eyes. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, something like that." Their eyes held a moment too long before the light turned green. Neither of them spoke after that. The silence carried everything they didn't say. The loneliness, the longing, the quiet understanding that something was happening between them, even if neither dared admit it. When they reached her building, Ryan parked by the curb. The car idled softly, rain misting against the windshield. Emma didn't move right away. She looked down at her hands, then at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet. "For listening. For being kind again." Ryan shook his head slightly. "You don't have to thank me, Emma. I enjoy talking to you. You make the drive feel lighter." Her heart skipped. "You mean less lonely?" He smiled, almost sadly. "Yeah, maybe that." For a long second they just sat there, the air between them thick with emotion. Neither spoke, neither looked away. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was something more fragile, something that hovered on the edge of understanding. Emma finally reached for the door. But before stepping out, she said softly, "You know, I used to think kindness was just politeness. But you make it feel like something real." Ryan looked at her with a quiet intensity. "That's because it is," she smiled, small, genuine, full of something she didn't want to lose. "Good night, Ryan." "Good night, Emma," he replied, his voice low and warm as she stepped out. The drizzle kissed her cheeks, cool against the warmth in her chest. She turned once more before walking inside. Catching a glimpse of him watching her through the window, his expression unreadable. Then he drove off, disappearing into the fog. Emma stood there for a long moment, unsteady, wondering why her world suddenly felt different. She told herself it was just a ride, just two people talking, but deep down she knew it wasn't that simple. Something had shifted, quietly but unmistakably. Inside her apartment, she leaned against the door and let out a shaky breath. Her reflection in the window showed a faint smile she didn't remember putting there. The kind of smile that comes when something unexpected begins to bloom slowly, softly, without permission, as the rain whispered outside. Emma realized that sometimes the most life-changing moments don't come with fireworks or grand gestures. They come quietly in a car on a rainy night, with a person who sees you when no one else does. And for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Rain poured down over Seattle like a curtain of silver light, washing the streets clean but drenching everything in its path. The office building glowed faintly in the night, most of its windows dark, except for one, the marketing floor where Emma Taylor sat, finishing her last bit of work. It was almost 9 p.m. The cleaning staff had already left. and silence filled the air, broken only by the distant hum of the rain outside. Emma rubbed her tired eyes and sighed. It had been a long week. Endless meetings, tight deadlines, and her car breaking down that very morning hadn't helped. She was planning to call a cab, but with the storm worsening, the chances of getting one were slim. She slipped on her coat, glanced around the quiet office, and grabbed her bag. She didn't notice the elevator ding behind her until she heard a familiar voice. "You're still here." Emma turned, startled. It was Ryan Cooper, her boss, the creative director of the firm. He stood near the elevator in his dark gray suit, his tie loosened, his expression calm but curious. Ryan was the kind of person who rarely raised his voice but somehow always got everyone's attention. He had that quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to prove itself. Emma gave a small, tired smile. "Yeah, just finishing up the client report. I didn't realize it got so late." Ryan glanced toward the window where the rain hammered against the glass. "You're not driving, are you?" She shook her head. "No, my car's at the repair shop. I was going to call a cab, but I doubt anyone's working in this weather." He nodded slowly, his brows knitting together. "Then let me drive you home." The words came so naturally from him, but to Emma, they felt unexpected. Ryan was always professional, always keeping a careful distance. He wasn't cold, but he wasn't the type to cross personal lines either. A small flutter of hesitation stirred in her chest. "Oh, that's really kind of you, but you don't have to." "I can manage," he interrupted gently. "Emma, it's pouring outside. I'd rather not leave knowing you're standing out there waiting for a cab in the storm. Please, it's no trouble." There was a calm certainty in his voice, not demanding, just sincere. She looked at him, then out the window again. The streets shimmered with water, traffic splashing by, and she realized how foolish it would be to argue. "All right," she said quietly. "Thank you." Ryan smiled, a small, genuine curve of his lips that softened his otherwise serious face. "Good. Let's go before it gets worse." They walked through the empty office together, their footsteps echoing in the hallway. The air smelled faintly of coffee and rain, the scent of late hours and tired ambition. When the elevator doors closed, Emma glanced sideways at him. He looked composed as always. But there was something different about him tonight. Maybe it was the way his shoulders seemed less tense. Or the way he looked at her, not as a boss but simply as a person. Outside, the parking lot shimmered under the rain. Ryan unlocked his car, a sleek black sedan, and held the door open for her. She slid inside, feeling the soft warmth of the leather seat. When he got in, the quiet hum of the engine filled the space between them. The rain tapped softly on the windshield, creating a rhythm that felt strangely comforting. For a few moments, neither spoke. The city lights blurred through the wet glass as they drove. Emma looked out the window, lost in thought. It wasn't just the rain or the late hour making her uneasy. It was the unexpected intimacy of the moment. She was sitting next to her boss, the man everyone admired, but few really knew. Ryan glanced at her briefly, his voice breaking the silence. "Rough day." She gave a tired laugh. "You could say that. My presentation got pushed, my car died, and now I owe the repair shop more than I'd like to admit." He smiled faintly. "That sounds about right for a Friday." She turned to him, noticing the relaxed tone in his voice. "And you? Still buried in client work?" "Always," he replied, chuckling softly. "But I don't mind. It keeps me distracted." Something in the way he said distracted caught her attention. There was a quiet weight behind his words, like he was talking about more than just work. But she didn't ask. Not yet. She knew better than to pry. They drove in silence for a while, the rain making soft patterns on the windshield. Emma felt the tiredness fade as the car moved through the quiet streets. For the first time all day, she felt safe and oddly seen. Ryan wasn't talking much, but his presence carried a calm energy, like he understood what exhaustion really felt like. He turned down a smaller street lined with tall maple trees glistening under streetlights. "How long have you lived in this part of town?" He asked. "About 3 years," she replied. "Moved here after my engagement ended. Needed a fresh start." Ryan's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. I didn't know that. Emma smiled sadly. Not many people do. It's not exactly conversation material during lunch breaks. He nodded, eyes still on the road. Fresh starts are hard, he said quietly. But they're also brave. His words surprised her. She wasn't used to hearing something that genuine from him. It made her chest tighten, not in sadness, but in recognition. You sound like someone who's had a few of those. He smiled softly. Maybe I have. The car turned another corner. The sound of rain softened, but the silence grew deeper, not uncomfortable, just filled with unspoken thoughts. Emma studied his face from the side. There was something steady about him, something that felt both strong and fragile at the same time. It wasn't just his good looks or confidence. It was the quiet loneliness she saw there, the kind that mirrors your own without saying a word. As they passed a red light, he spoke again. You know, you've been doing amazing work lately. I don't say it enough, but I notice how much effort you put in. Emma blinked, caught off guard. Thank you. I wasn't sure anyone noticed, to be honest. I notice, he said simply, glancing her way with a faint smile. You're good at what you do. You bring energy into the team, something we've needed for a while. Her heart gave a small, unexpected jolt. Compliments weren't something she received often, especially from him. That's really kind of you, she said softly. He nodded once. It's just the truth. The rain eased to a drizzle as they neared her neighborhood. The world outside looked peaceful now, the storm fading into mist, streetlights glowing on wet pavement. The car slowed as they approached her apartment building, but neither seemed eager for the drive to end. Emma turned slightly toward him. I really appreciate this, Ryan. You didn't have to go out of your way. He looked at her for a moment, his expression calm but sincere. It wasn't out of my way. Something in the way he said it made her pulse quicken. It wasn't flirtation. It was something gentler, something real. She looked down at her hands, suddenly unsure what to say. For once, the confident woman who handled boardrooms and clients with ease felt nervous. Ryan parked in front of her building, the car engine humming softly. The world outside was quiet again. No thunder, no rush, just the steady rhythm of rain fading into silence. Emma reached for the door handle but paused, turning back to him. Thank you again, she said quietly. Not just for the ride. For being kind. He gave her a small smile. You don't have to thank me for that, Emma. She smiled back, a little uncertain, a little moved. Something about that moment, the quiet, the warmth, the way their eyes held for just a second longer than necessary, felt different, unspoken, unplanned. As she stepped out into the cool air, Ryan lowered his window slightly. Get some rest, he said, his tone soft, almost caring. She nodded. You too, and drive safe. The window rolled up, the car slowly pulled away, and Emma stood there watching the taillights fade into the rain. A strange ache filled her chest, not sadness, but something deeper. Something like longing. She didn't know why, but as she walked to her door, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a ride home. It was the beginning of something neither of them expected, something that had quietly started in the middle of a rainy Seattle night. With two people too tired to pretend they didn't feel something real. And as she turned off her hallway light, Emma whispered to herself what just happened. But she already knew. It wasn't just a drive. It was a moment, one she wouldn't forget. The following week passed quietly, but something in Emma's world had changed. Every morning when she entered the office, she felt a quiet flutter of anticipation, the kind that made her straighten her posture, check her reflection twice, and smile without meaning to. Ryan didn't treat her any differently in front of others. But their conversations had become softer, more personal, like there was a hidden layer of meaning beneath every word. On Wednesday evening, after a long day filled with client meetings, the office began to empty again. The golden hour sunlight faded behind the skyline, painting the city in warm shades of orange and blue. Emma was still at her desk reviewing the final proposal for an important pitch. She wanted it to be perfect. Ryan had trusted her with the lead, and she didn't want to let him down. She didn't hear him walk up until his shadow fell across her desk. "Still here?" Ryan asked, his tone half amused, half concerned. She looked up and smiled. "Almost done. I just need to finalize this section before tomorrow." He leaned against the edge of her desk, arms crossed. "You said that an hour ago. You need a break." Emma laughed softly. "Says the man who's here later than anyone else." He chuckled. "Touché, but seriously, it's late. Let me drive you home again." Her heart skipped, that familiar mix of hesitation and warmth returning. "You sure? I can call a ride." He shook his head. "No, I insist. Besides, it gives me an excuse to get out of here too." She closed her laptop, feeling a strange mix of nerves and excitement. There was something about being alone with him that felt both dangerous and comforting. As they stepped out of the building, the night air was cool and clear. No rain this time. Just the faint hum of the city around them. In the car, the silence between them wasn't awkward. The radio played quietly, soft acoustic music that filled the spaces between their breaths. The road ahead was dimly lit and the city lights shimmered in the distance. Ryan broke the silence first. "You did great today. The clients were impressed." Emma smiled. "Thank you. I was a little nervous, but it turned out better than I expected." He glanced at her, his expression sincere. "You shouldn't be nervous anymore. You've got something rare, Emma. Not just skill, but heart. People feel that when you speak." She felt her cheeks warm. "You really think so?" "I know. So," he said simply, "I see it every day." The way he said it made her chest tighten. His voice wasn't just encouraging, it was gentle, almost protective. She wanted to thank him, but the words stuck in her throat. The truth was, she'd never had someone believe in her like that before. The car continued down the quiet streets. The world outside blurred into shadows, but inside, everything felt sharper. His voice, his presence, the faint sound of his breathing. After a few minutes, Ryan spoke again, his tone lowered this time. "You ever think about what makes life meaningful?" Emma turned to him. "All the time." "And?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "I guess moments like this, the small ones, when you feel connected to someone, even if you don't understand why." Ryan smiled faintly, eyes still on the road. "That's a good answer. What about you?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "For me, it's when I stop pretending I'm fine. I've spent years building walls, working late, staying busy, convincing myself it's enough. But lately I've realized it's not the work that keeps me going. It's the people who remind me what it feels like to be alive again." His voice trembled slightly at the end, and Emma felt her heart twist. "You mean people like your family? Your friends?" He turned to her, his eyes meeting hers in the dim light. "People like you." Her breath caught. For a second, she didn't move. The air felt thick, like the whole world had stopped to listen. "Ryan?" she whispered, unsure what to say. He looked away, exhaling slowly. "I shouldn't have said that. You're my employee. It's unprofessional." But Emma shook her head. "Don't," she said softly. "Don't apologize for being honest." He looked back at her, eyes searching hers. "You make it hard not to, you know. You make me want to say things I shouldn't." Her heart was pounding now. "Like what?" "Like how I look forward to seeing you every morning. How I notice when you're tired. How I find excuses to walk past your desk just to say hello. Things that have nothing to do with work." Emma felt a tear slip down her cheek before she could stop it. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming truth of it all. She'd felt it too. Every look, every word, every quiet pause between them. She'd just been too afraid to name it. The car came to a gentle stop in front of her apartment building. Neither of them moved. The city was quiet, the air filled only with the faint hum of the engine. Ryan finally spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've changed something in me, Emma. I didn't think I could feel this again, and that scares me." She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "It scares me too." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening under the soft light. "But it's real. That's what makes it worth it." Emma felt tears streaming now, her emotions too heavy to hold back. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because I can't keep pretending it's just work," he said. "Because you deserve to know how much you matter. Even if nothing ever happens between us, you need to know you've made my world feel alive again." The honesty in his tone broke something inside her. She'd been strong for so long, hiding behind her own walls, pretending she was fine on her own. Hearing him say that, hearing someone finally see her for who she was too much to hold in. She wiped her tears and smiled weakly. "You have no idea what that means to me." He smiled back, a quiet sadness in his eyes. "I think I do." For a moment they just looked at each other. No words, no rules. It's just two people caught in the gravity of what they couldn't say out loud. There was longing there, yes, but also peace. Emma finally reached for the door handle, her voice soft. "Good night, Ryan." He hesitated, then said gently, "Good night, Emma. Take care of yourself." She nodded and stepped out into the cool night air. The sky was clear, the air still, and the world felt strangely new. As his car pulled away, she watched the red taillights fade into the distance, her heart full and aching all at once. Inside her apartment, she leaned against the wall, tears still glistening in her eyes. She didn't know what would happen next, whether their connection would grow or fade, whether it was love or something more fragile. But she knew one thing for certain. What he said tonight had changed her. It wasn't about romance or titles or forbidden feelings. It was about being seen. About someone looking past the surface and finding the part of her she'd stopped showing the world. She sat by the window, watching the stars, replaying his words in her mind. "You've changed something in me." The sentence echoed softly in her heart. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small or unseen. She felt brave. She felt alive. And as she drifted to sleep that night, one thought stayed with her. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with grand gestures or promises. Sometimes it comes quietly. In moments of truth that catch you off guard and leave you in tears, not from pain, but from finally being understood. That night, as the city slept and the moon hung low, Emma realized that not all goodbyes are endings. Some are beginnings disguised as good nights. And deep down, she knew this was only the start of something that neither of them would ever forget.